Well, good morning. Welcome back to the Morning Report. My name is Willie Lawson. Listen, you don't need a tinfoil hat to stop and scratch your head when Bill Gates says that vaccines could help lower the world's population. He said it in 2010, standing on a TED stage in front of a crowd of innovators and influencers. The words rolled out of his mouth. And to this day, that clip circulates like wildfire. And we're going to play that clip for you this afternoon. So, for a lot of people, that one sentence was enough to plant the seed of suspicion. Wait a minute. Did he just say that vaccines will reduce the population? It sounds sinister, almost cartoon villain level, especially in the era of COVID and the global health mandates. Now, defenders of Gates will say, relax, relax. That's not what he meant. He was talking about slowing the growth rate of the population, not killing people. And I guess technically that's probably true. But here's the issue. That explanation rests on a demographic model that makes sense in a place like Seattle, Washington, or Zurich, Switzerland, but it falls apart in Lagos or Dakota or Guatemala or rural Kenya. So today we're going to break this down into plain English. What did Gates actually say? Why does it sound so bad? What's the logic behind it? And does the logic even hold water in the real world? And finally, why do people around the world distrust not only the words of a billionaire like Gates, but the entire framework of population control, especially when it's dressed up as public health? We're going to hit history, culture, politics, and some raw truth.
Each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra, but let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%.
There, you hear what he said. He said the world today has 6.8 billion people. It's headed up to about 9 billion. It's about 8 billion now, really. Now, if we do a really good job on new vaccines, healthcare, reproductive services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. You heard what he said. So if you're a normal person watching at home and you hear the words vaccines and lower population in the same sentence, the hair on the back of your neck stands up. And that's not paranoia. That's instinct. Now, his defenders are going to argue this. He was only talking about reducing the growth rate, not eliminating people. But even then, the sentence is awkward. It makes it sound like there's a direct line between giving kids shots and getting fewer kids born. Now, to be fair, there's a technical explanation. In wealthy nations, once child mortality fell, families voluntarily chose to have fewer children. And the idea is that if kids aren't dying young, then parents don't feel the pressure to have 5, 6, or 7 to sort of hedge their bets. But But as we'll see, that child survival equals smaller families model is not universal. It's a Western assumption. And when Gates throws it out as if it's a universal law of humanity, he exposes a blind spot and fuels suspicion. Now, let's give this dude his due. Gates didn't invent this idea. It's called the demographic transition model, and it's been in textbooks for decades. There are 4 stages. The first stage is high birth rates and high death rates keeps the population flat. Okay. The second stage is death rates fall thanks to things like clean water and sanitation and vaccines and all and new medical care. But birth rates stay high. Population just explodes. Stage 3. Birth rates fall as societies industrialize, as societies urbanize, and kids survive to adulthood. Now, stage 4. Both birth rates and death rates lower. Population stabilizes or even declines. So this pattern describes Europe's industrial age. It describes America in the 19th and 20th centuries, and even Japan after World War II. So Gates was just repeating the model he learned from demographers and development economists. Now, here's the flaw. Models describe what happens in the West. They don't dictate what must happen everywhere else. They don't account for culture, they don't account for religion, they don't account for economics, and they don't account for history. Now, in large parts of the world, children aren't just dependents. They're actually assets. On a farm in sub-Saharan Africa, more kids mean what? More hands to plant, more hands to harvest, more hands to herd animals. In South Asia, kids are your retirement plan. There's no social security. Your sons and daughters are your pension. And in many cultures, having a large family is part of pride or status, even masculinity, or just a blessing from God. Now, think about this. If you already have 7 kids who have made it to their teens, you're not sitting around worrying about infant mortality. No, you're proud. You may even want more because each child is another strand in your family's rope of strength. So when Gates says better vaccines mean smaller families, he's assuming that people will think and act like Westerners, urban, educated, wealthy. But the reality is different. For many, children are not a liability. They're a wealth. They are security. They are joy. That's why fertility rates in some countries stay high even after child mortality falls. The equation Gates is relying on doesn't always compute. Okay, let's talk about the elephant in the room. History. When people in the developing world hear a billionaire talk about using vaccines to reduce population growth, they just don't think about demography. They think about real, documented episodes of forced sterilization and coercive family planning. Now, none of these things that I'm going to mention now are new or happened, 700 years ago. Let's go back to India in the 1970s. Millions of men were sterilized under Indira Gandhi's government, many against their will, as part of a family planning campaign. Here in the United States, poor women, Black women, Native American women were sterilized without informed consent well into the 20th century. In Peru, in the 1990s, under Alberto, hundreds of thousands, hundreds of thousands of indigenous women were sterilized, often without consent. 9 years ago, in Kenya, 2014, there were Catholic bishops who were accusing the World Health Organization and UNICEF, remember Trick or Treat for UNICEF? Of distributing tetanus vaccines that were laced with a hormone that could induce sterility. Now, whether or not the accusation was true, it cemented distrust. So when Gates makes his statement, people hear it against that backdrop. They don't think child survival leads to lower fertility. They think, we've been here before. We've been experimented on. We've been targeted for sterilization. Why should this be different? The suspicion isn't crazy. It's rooted in lived history. Layer on top of the vaccine record itself. Let's go back to this. Something called the Cutter incident. It happened in 1955. You can research this, and I suggest that you do. A batch of polio vaccines accidentally contained live virus. Now, back in the day, you would get a little bit of the dog that bit you, but it wouldn't be live virus, it'd be dead virus. But a batch of polio vaccines accidentally contained live virus. What happened? 40,000 children were infected with polio. Hundreds were paralyzed, and at least 10 died. That scarred trust in vaccines for generations. A few years ago, during the COVID era, myocarditis cases in young men after the mRNA vaccines, blood counts with the Johnson & Johnson, but blood clots with the Johnson & Johnson, safety signals debated in public, and a heavy-handed, safe and effective marketing slogan. Now, even when risks were in percentage terms small, the messaging was often dismissive. And people just heard, shut up and take it. Right? So if you combine Gates's clumsy population growth with that track record, and then you have a recipe for deep suspicion. Here's the bigger picture. Gates is not a neutral player. He's one of the richest men on earth. He's one of the top donors to the World Health Organization. He funds Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance, and pours billions into global health projects. Now, his supporters and defenders say that's philanthropy. Critics say it's influence buying. Either way, it means when Gates speaks, his words carry weight far beyond an academic seminar. So when he casually mentions vaccines reducing population growth, people just don't parse the demographic theory. They ask, What's his agenda? What does he stand to gain? So, in an era where trust in elites is at an all-time low, Gates's brand of technocratic optimism—that's a hard word to say. Technocratic optimism doesn't reassure people; it unsettles them. So, at the heart of this debate is a clash of worldviews. Technocrats like Gates think in models, charts, stats, and outcomes. Families think in culture, value, pride, and in faith. Telling a Nigerian farmer or a Guatemalan mother of 8 that better vaccines will help you choose fewer children is not just wrong, it's insulting. It reduces human choice to a line on a spreadsheet. And that's why the message lands with suspicion, because people sense they're being treated not as human beings with dignity, but as variables to be managed. Let me talk about this metaphor that I came up with that came to me. See, I don't know. It's funny. I don't know if I made it up, but it came to me actually this morning. It's pretty rare to get struck by lightning. But if you're standing on a golf course holding a metal club and thunder rolls in, what do? You get off the course. You don't roll your eyes and say, well, statistically, this is rare. You respect the risk. You respect the consequence. Likewise, people aren't crazy for hearing Gates's words and stepping off the metaphorical golf course. They're not conspiracy theorists. They're human beings who understand history, who value their families, who knows when something smells off. The truth is, if you want trust, you don't dismiss people's fears with stats. You respect them. You tell the truth plainly. And you stop talking about population like it's a problem to be engineered by elites. Because at the end of the day, life is not a spreadsheet. Children are not variables. Families are not math. My name is Willie Lawson. This has been the Morning Report. Until we see you again, go out there and learn to love somebody. And for goodness sakes, God take care of yourself. We will see you when we see you. Bye bye now.